All right, man. Peace. So, a lot of brothers hit me up due to the recent developments in the Colin Kaepernick narrative, where now has been revealed that he has signed a book deal. Of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Let's move to Colin Kaepernick, who is still unsigned and might actually be looking for a new career path. Reportedly, the controversial quarterback is meeting with publishers in New York to pitch a book idea. We don't know exactly what the book will be about, but it seems likely it will deal with the issues of social justice.
Now, remember, he can go meet with a book publisher, but he didn't have time to go meet with his NFL woke compatriots to confront the NFL owners and deal with the issues that his NFL woke compatriots have alleged his kneeling was about. I'm already on record as saying that the issues that the NFL players are bringing to the owners is not even really in reference to what he was kneeling about to begin with. He was kneeling about police brutality and the overall United States system of oppression and racism, which is true, but it's not going to be solved by kneeling. And beyond all that, his true allegiance is to wokeism, to globalism, to quasi-communism, and to his handler, Ness Nitty. Okay? I've been stating that for I don't know how long, since this narrative has come to the forefront, and I've been making videos on this subject. But it's just interesting that he did not have time to support his fellow NFL compatriots who look up to him as a hero and a leader and a martyr, but he had time to go meet about this book deal. Which is reasonable because he knows that the book deal is going to make him more money than any possible NFL contract will, because unless there's some strange development, and like I said, unless a part of the narrative is for the NFL owners to bring him back into the NFL as a propitiation for how outraged they've made many of these meathead players, he's never going to be on an NFL field ever again. But anyway.
Cowherd, are you surprised Kaepernick is seeking a book deal?
No, because he's always been a little bit of a contradiction. He's political, but didn't vote for president. He's outspoken, but wouldn't talk for 8 months on his own protest.
I really don't agree with that. I don't believe that he's necessarily contradicted himself per se. I just think that he's a pawn. I think that he had a shelf life. His message had a shelf life because the things that he was saying really was not based in his own understanding. It was based in what was being fed to him. And he ran along with it. I believe that his image became a little too much for him to deal with. It was a little too much for him to bear. And I think that he needed the reprieve. I think that he likes to hide behind social media because it gives him a chance to just regain his bearings for a bit. I don't believe that he really wants to be in the NFL per se, but he has to keep on that role. I think that he'd much rather just chill out where he's at. As we know, he is an introvert. Prior to his reincarnation as a revolutionary leader in the NFL, one of the major quibbles about him in the San Francisco 49er locker room was that he did not speak to anybody. He was not a leader. He liked to be by himself. He would walk around with his headphones on, which, I mean, if that's your personality, then that's your personality. But then you're not really going to be a quarterback in the NFL unless you're on a Tom Brady level of efficiency and proficiency. And he was not. Once again, I believe he was activated by his handler, Ness Nitty, to cause a lot of confusion. And that is what has ensued.
I thought he would be into a playbook. Now he's writing a book. To me, he's always been a contradiction, which goes back to your theory, there's an identity crisis with him.
Well, there's definitely an identity crisis, and that's common for so-called blacks like Colin Kaepernick, who, number one, not only is he of quote-unquote mixed race, but he was raised in a household by Caucasians. So he certainly is looking for an identity. He's dealing with issues in regards to who he really is and where he comes from. I had some guy come on the internet and say the reason why you disagree with Kaepernick is because these things haven't happened to you. And I had to let him know, look, man, when you really lived it and when you really came up in a certain environment, you don't have to wear it on your sleeve. Okay? You don't have to wear it on your sleeve. I move upward and onward. The brothers that I'm confederate with and that I socialize with, we move upward and onward. It's not a big deal to us. Okay? A lot of cats are living through the internet and through social media. They're getting so incensed by things that have been going on for decades, for centuries now. So they're looking for something to lead them. They're looking for something to galvanize them. I don't need that. I'm self-motivated. I don't need Colin Kaepernick to tell me about the police force. He doesn't know anything about the police force at all. I believe that the previous run-in that he had with the cops prior to this situation was in regards to the issue that he had with Tiana Taylor, who is currently with this dude, what's his name, Iman Shumpert. She had the baby with him, but before she was with him, she was with Kaepernick. And I believe that he had a situation where she accused him of being involved in a situation that she claimed was rape or something along those lines, sexual assault, where she claimed that she was knocked out in a hotel bedroom in Miami. If I remember correctly. If I'm wrong, one of you brothers can correct me. But this guy has never been associated with anything even approaching the racial oppression that his followers have assigned to him or affiliated with him for standing up for. Look, in all reality, is there racism in this society? Absolutely. Is this our rest? No, it is not. The reason why our people get so emotionally disturbed by what's going on in this society is because they want a hug so bad, man. I mean, this is a common theme that I have reiterated over and over again on this channel. It's very basic.
I've just never been able to get my arms around what he truly cares about. I hear from his allies, his friends.
He cares about discord. That is what he is being used for. That's what he's a pawn of. He's a pawn for discord. His handler, Ness Nitty, is an agent of chaos. She winds him up and sends him out. Or I should say, she winds him up and has him tweet. That's if that's even him really tweeting. Like I said before, might be somebody else handling his Twitter handle. Who knows?
He's all in on football. Then I go to his Instagram page. He didn't have a football post in 9 months. So, I'm sitting here waiting for the playbook, and now he's like, no, I'm going to write a book. And I'm like, that's who I see him as. Kind of a walking contradiction of what he likes and what he does.
I'm not surprised. I think he has a bunch of political handlers around him who are insisting.
Thank you, sir. I've been saying that for the longest time. I just haven't used political. He has other handlers. But yes, he's being controlled. And as I've stated previously in a previous video, he has a lot of liberal handlers who are telling him this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do in regards to groups that he's associating with. There's no doubt about that. He's not somebody who's looking around at what's going on around him and is making his own decisions. He's too valuable right now. He's a major piece on the pop culture chessboard right now.
Insisting on making him this symbol for this ice bucket challenge movement he has with people taking a knee. And they see Colin Kaepernick as this symbol of this millennial generation and the activism, and they're going to save the world. And so they're going to write a book for him.
Agreed. Most of it will have nothing to do with him at all. There's going to be somebody else ghostwriting him. He'll get a lot of the proceeds. This is an attempt to keep his name relevant and keep him above water for now until they no longer need him.
But a 29-year-old that hasn't really accomplished a whole hell of a lot in order to put down in a book. Generally speaking, the athletes that have written books have won championships, and they're telling you how they did it.
Well, remember, they're trying to cast him as the new Muhammad Ali. So they want to get in early. Okay? Remember, the narrative on Ali was everybody disagreed with him, but now years down the line, they look at him as a hero. That's not really true, because what they've done is, as I've already stated, they've taken the Muhammad Ali story and they've contorted it into some neoliberal fascist protest that he did, where he was like, I'm totally against this and I'm against. Ali did not start to proactively speak against the Vietnam War until he went on the college speaking circuit. That's when he started to speak against the Vietnam War because he was being paid to do so. You know, I had a brother who got mad at me because he claimed that I was misrepresenting what Ali did. Once again, Muhammad Ali was a member of a separatist movement. He was a member of a separatist organization. They didn't speak on the affairs of the so-called white man. In their belief system, they wanted so-called blacks to separate from the Caucasian. Ali did not start to proactively speak against the Vietnam War until he went on the speaking circuit, and 80 to 90% of the people that he was speaking to were young, liberal Caucasians who you would describe as hippies. And that's what they wanted to hear. And he was a hero for them because he was anti-establishment. So he was getting paid to basically give them what they wanted to hear, which was an affluent black athlete who was bucking the system and who was speaking against the powers that be at the time. Now, mind you, 50 years later, all those 17 and 18-year-olds in college who listened to Ali speak, they're now 67, 68 years old. And what is their mindset? What is it that they co-sign now? You know, this should be a lesson for so-called black people, particularly the so-called black man, particularly the so-called black man who is a high-level thinker, that everything has a process. You can't look at people and how they think at 18 and think that they're going to think the same way at 65, 66, 67 years old. It doesn't work like that. All right. But anyway, they're trying to cast Kaepernick as the modern day Ali, and they're trying to rectify the issue that they had with Ali, which was you had this dynamic, charismatic figure, but they didn't control him. He was under the control of the Nation of Islam. Now with Kaepernick, they have the opportunity to puppet society with a new pseudo Ali, a guy who they can use to string a lot of the woke internet revolutionaries along, and hopefully bring in some form of globalist mindset.
Or generally speaking, you know, people that have something to say have had a lot more to say publicly than Colin Kaepernick has. But I'm not surprised his handlers are going to try to put a book out promoting this guy.
Yeah, they got to do it right now while the iron is hot. Because after this NFL season, something's going to give. And either way, one way or the other, they are going to resolve this issue. Because these owners who are extremely affluent, they're going to get back, they're going to get in their chambers and they're going to say to themselves, look, how do we tie a knot around this thing? How do we tie a nice little bow around this thing and finish this shit off and make sure that it never happens again? All right. Because, you know, somebody threw a cherry bomb into our window that we thought was just a smoke bomb. And, you know, this shit is about to ignite. We have to salvage our house and we have to figure out a way to put up, some unbreakable windows so that this doesn't happen again. So Kaepernick's handlers are smart enough to know that they better get him a book deal, a money deal as soon as possible. From what I understand, he has a book deal with a homosexual publisher associated with Random House, who has an imprint through Random House named Chris Jackson. His publishing imprint is called One World Publications. Once again, it's called One World Publications. Okay, just so that you guys understand what the overall intent here is. One world meaning globalism. And Mr. Chris Jackson is also, like I said, a homosexual. He produced a book, or he published a book for Jay-Z. And I'm trying to remember who else he did one for. Ta-Nehisi Coates, the very popular so-called black writer, who also did some writing for the Black Panther comic book series.
Well, he decided to write a book because he's never going to pick up a playbook again. When you sue the NFL, that's it. It's over.
Thank you, sir.
Over. I mean, so he has nothing else to do. What's going to be in the book? I'm like what you just said. We won championships. I had a stellar career. I played 15 years in the league. I did this. I did that. I have this record. I did that record. I played against this guy.
And him writing a book is really a mockery of his following. That's basically Kaepernick's handler saying, you know what? He has a huge internet following through Twitter and a lot of these other black social media outlets. You know, he has we have a market that we can promote the book through. We can have him make his next public appearance to promote the book. Maybe even have him go on some talk shows, some speaking circuits, have him go on shows like this and confront a lot of his quote unquote detractors. Who knows? This may be what they have been waiting on the whole time. An opportunity for, this woke racial confrontation in the NFL to build to a crescendo where they can bring him out and capitalize off of the book. And this will really be his last big payday outside of the NFL. So, we'll see.
Well, what's going to be in the book? I had a protest. We kneeled.
Chapter 2?
Jim Harbaugh made me great.
Yeah. Yes, Jim Harbaugh made me great, meaning what? Jim Harbaugh was his first handler. That was the guy who really was able to put a battery in his back and make him a presentable quarterback in the NFL.
10 pages?
As I keep looking at this guy and we keep talking about him, I don't even know either this guy is a genius, either he's a genius, marketing genius, because he hasn't said a word throughout this whole time.
He don't need to say a word. He has a bunch of internet revolutionaries out here to march for him like a bunch of worker ants.
Oh, you don't understand Cap. You don't know what he's fighting for. Cap is fighting for the people. Cap is getting on one knee for us because Cap is...
Man, please. When I hear niggas talk like that, all that tells me is that, you need to go find your dad, bro. Go find your dad and be a man. You can't be a man on one knee. You got to be a man standing on 2 feet. I'm sorry. I don't give a damn what anybody says about that. In regards to Kaepernick, no, I don't believe that he's a genius. I don't believe he's an idiot. I just believe that he's somebody who's searching for an identity, and he's somebody who's mentally fractured. And as I've stated already, I believe he's a monarch athlete. That's just my opinion on that. I believe that Ness Nitty is his handler and that he's an asset. But, we'll find out in the long run.
Hasn't called a press conference, hasn't sat down with anybody, knowing that maybe this book deal's coming, because he's going to get a lot of money. I got a feeling he's going to get paid, or he doesn't know what the hell is going on.
That's exactly what it is, Tony. He don't know what the hell is going on. Kaepernick has no idea what's coming next. He gets told by his handlers what's coming next. They say, Cap, look, just sit tight. Now, don't say too much on Twitter. Don't be too inflammatory. We'll tell you what to say and when to say it. No, we got some plans for you coming down the line here. We got a little book deal. And, some other things down the stretch. And, when they don't need him anymore, they'll remove him one way or the other.
This is just something he might.
Think about we talking about the flag. All the people that say, they don't want to watch players kneel. They gonna buy his book.
There's a group out there that are following him. I'm telling you, there's at least
He had a protest. I go back to what you say. The amount of people that support Kaepernick is louder than it is large.
I agree. Like as I've stated, I believe that there's a perception that there are people who will buy his book. But to be quite frank with you, most of his followers and the people who really are going hard for him in a very zealous manner, most of them motherfuckers don't read. I'm just being honest. I don't get the perception from most of the Kaepernick diehards that they are very literate, that they read very much. So I doubt that they're going to buy his book. I believe that a lot of them will order it on Amazon just to put on their coffee table, right next to their ashtray for their blunt. But that's about it.
He had a protest in New York City. There's 18 million people in New York City.
How many showed up?
About 2,000.
Yeah.
A lot of people...
A lot of them were gawkers.
Yeah.
A lot of people say...
No, a lot of them, I won't say that they were gawkers. They were just... they were just so-called black people who were just looking for any form of revolt or rebellion or facsimile of one so that they could feel like they were a part of something. The thing with our people is that they're feeling really froggy right now. As I've stated in a previous video, our people are at a very adolescent level right now. They're approaching adulthood. That's why they have this spirit of rebellion right now. They just don't know what to follow, and they don't know who to follow. But this process is going to be an elongated one, and it's going to be used to reveal who the true leaders are, as opposed to who the people are who are just talking, but don't really know what the hell they're talking about and don't really have an end game.
Say they're into the movement. How many players have stood up and been willing to support him? Not many.
They don't get their paycheck.
Sports Illustrated wouldn't put him on the cover. I mean, again,
they put Roger Goodell and everybody
he's kind
else
of
there.
a forgotten man. So I think there's this idea that he's galvanized He started a discussion and a protest, which, for the record, has waned to the point where a dozen players last week kneeled.
Well, look, we already know, and I'm already on record as stating that Donald Trump did what he did on purpose to bring out all the dissenters so that they could all be destroyed one by one. Donald Trump executed a very brilliant strategy to force a confrontation between the players and the owners, which is what we see now, and it's going to come to its ultimate conclusion very soon. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the game plan will be with the owners in regards to how they're going to resolve this issue because of their poor planning and their underestimation of the players and their rebelliousness.
All right, listen, you guys know I'm a noted writer. I used to be a noted writer. So
Yeah.
I want to help Kaepernick out with some book ideas, some titles of his book for Kaepernick. So the first one, Float Like a Butterfly, Protest on My Knee, the story of Muhammad Ali. Book, here's another one, Trickle Down Social Justice, How My Next NFL Contract Fixes Police Brutality.
Oh, boy.
Kaepernick gets back in the league and fixes police brutality. All right, Colin Kaepernick's Underground Railroad to Unemployment has tweeted to Sean King.
Oh, that's Sean King? What a surprise. It looked like another dude with an identity crisis. Oh, boy.
And finally, the sour grapes of Jerry Jones's wrath.
Now that's not bad. That's a pretty good one. I'll give you that one.
All right, coming up.
No, all three of them shits was corny, but it is what it is. Right now, this narrative is going to build, and eventually it's going to lead to a very fractured NFL. It may lead to an issue with the NFL that the NFL will never be able to recover from. It may be viewed in years from now as an event that totally changed the NFL to the extent where it's almost like a timeline before Kaepernick and after Kaepernick. But we'll see. All right, so now let's see what Stephen A. and Will Cain and Max Kellerman have to say about this issue in regards to Kaepernick signing a book deal.
So we've all been wanting to hear, obviously, from Colin Kaepernick. Will Cain here with us. We always want to hear from you as well.
Some do. Some do.
Some do. Good point. So, guys, Colin Kaepernick wanting to put his words on paper, bless you, whoever that just came from.
Now, a lot of people do not like Will Cain, but as I stated in regards to Jason Whitlock, he serves a very important purpose. He provides a counterbalance to the super liberalism. That is something that ESPN understands very well in regards, or I should say, let me specify. This is something that Stephen A. Smith understands very well. Because Stephen A. Smith, he has, by his own admission, certain liberal leanings and certain quote-unquote conservative leanings. So he knows the importance of having a Will Cain on the show because Will Cain, more than to counterbalance Stephen A., Will Cain is really there to counterbalance Max Kellerman. That dynamic of white conservative versus white liberal is something that Stephen A. understands is very provocative and provocatory for his show. So it's important to have a person who disagrees with you but can actually use empirical data in their disagreement to substantiate their claims. This is something that Michael Smith and Jamel Hill do not understand, which is why they're starting to lose airtime on their own show. If you watch their show, the Sports Center at 6 o'clock, and you pay very close attention, they're getting more and more blocks taken out of their show because they just want to hear each other promote super liberal bullshit propaganda.
Max, what was your reaction when you heard this about him wanting to do a book?
I think it's a good idea. We all want to hear from Colin Kaepernick, but he's not an academic. He apparently is not a great, public orator.
So if he's not an academic, why do you want to read his book for? The only reason why you're saying it's a good idea is because you're a nosy white liberal, and you want to read the book to see if you can glean anything out of it that you can use to parlay to your bullshit views on First Take.
And maybe doesn't feel comfortable or confident enough to debate his subject matter in a live forum, in a forum like this or somewhere else in the...
I don't believe that he feels like he should have to debate racism. I believe that he believes that racism is something that everybody already knows exists. So I don't believe that he believes that he should have to debate racism. I believe that his issue is that he has no end game. That's what I've stated from the start in regards to Colin Kaepernick. The issue is not about whether or not this society is quote unquote racist. Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles, they can all see that. The issue is that he had no end game, and he was pushed and prodded into being something that he was not and that he will never be, that being a leader. He's not a leader. He knows that he's not. He knows that he never will be a leader. So he had to double back, reconvene, get a little help, and try to rebrand and remarket himself, because he knows that he doesn't have an end game, nor should he. He's an NFL quarterback. He's not a leader on societal reform.
In the media, but a book is a very different kind of thing to do. It's a different kind of media project. Ostensibly, he'd be writing with someone else, right, who is trained to do that?
No. Ostensibly, he'd be providing little tidbits, and they would take that and extrapolate what they can, and then just try to create a narrative that will help him and his image. As I've stated, he's inked the book deal with the super liberal globalist book imprint called One World under Random House Entertainment. The publisher's name is Chris Jackson, and just doing a little research on him, looking him up. He clearly is a homosexual. Once again, the name of his imprint is One World, so you know what he's about. He's a globalist. As I've been telling you guys from the very start, Colin Kaepernick and this whole movement is based on globalism, which is really Luciferianism. All right, this is why I noted that he clearly has Marxist/communist leanings through his girlfriend. There's no doubt about that.
Who's more of a wordsmith than he is, you would think. He would have researchers, so he could get his arguments really down pat and express them not only thoughtfully but articulately and precisely. And I think all that's a good idea, particularly because we want to hear from him.
You see, guys like Max Kellerman, as I say, white liberals, they really just enjoy seeing the emoting that black liberals do because it provides fodder for them. All right? You know, one day, hopefully soon, the so-called black liberal will start to grasp what their true place is in this whole setup. And that is to basically just be used as a, as a pawn by the Caucasian liberal. Basically, you're a bullet taker. You're the one that they send out first in the infantry to take all the shots, and then they can get all the glory. That's really all it's about. He doesn't really care about Colin Kaepernick or the cause of racism. Max Kellerman is on record as stating that that there's basically nothing that you can do about the police or quote-unquote police brutality because they are set up as a convention where they should be the only ones who are armed. Okay? So Max Kellerman is just a grown, for lack of a better term, wiggle white boy, infatuated with hip-hop and quote-unquote so-called black culture, who, right now, he sees the world differently at 40-something years old than he did at in his late teens or early 20s. And he understands that everything right now is really just an opportunity. Everything in life that you encounter is really just an opportunity in this commercial society. So a Colin Kaepernick storyline, narrative is a big opportunity for people like him to capitalize off of and create a brand. You also see it with a guy like Shannon Sharp, who's trying to use the Colin Kaepernick storyline to create a brand for himself. Jamel Hill, same thing. They're trying to brand themselves off of this Kaepernick storyline. So, of course, they're going to support him coming out with a book. Off camera, they know that it's ridiculous. What the fuck can a 29-year-old quarterback who had, 2 good seasons, really a season and a half that were good, what the hell can he possibly have to say that's worth hearing? Oh, I got on one knee, I kneeled, I met a Muslim chick with a big butt who tells me what to do. The end.
And if he's not comfortable doing it in a live setting or publicly speaking, then why not write about it? A lot of people, there's a lot of talk, well, it's his girlfriend gave him these ideas or he heard this somewhere else and he...
Look. Look, I've been saying for months that all this came from his woman. And now the media is finally starting to catch on that she's the Svengali behind this whole thing. Right? They first started to mention her as being the possible source of a lot of his views maybe about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago. I was saying it on here 5 or 6 months ago. Who this really was about and who was the source of all this bullshit, if not longer. From the very first time that I spoke about this issue, I stated that his so-called girlfriend, Ness Nitty, Vanessa Diab, is his handler. Okay? Colin Kaepernick is just, he's just a robot. He's a wind-up toy.
And he's not really versed in it.
And now a lot of these people in the media are starting to allude to it. I believe that they know certain things that they don't talk about on camera. I'm not saying that they know that she's necessarily an MK handler, even though some of these people who are higher up on the totem pole, they know. But overall, at the very least, they know that she is behind a lot of his views and when he speaks and when he doesn't speak and certain connections that he's getting.
Colin Kaepernick came across ideas presented to him in such a way, or he came across them, that appealed to him, that he thought felt right. That doesn't necessarily mean he can articulate precisely the argument and rebut counters to his argument in real time perfectly well. But we do all want to hear from him. So why not do it this way? And in terms of him looking for $1 million or whatever it is for the book, he's one of the top 25 or 30 at least best quarterbacks in the world, an extremely competitive profession. And he's been locked out of his chosen profession by an NFL that has a de facto monopoly on professional football at the highest level, certainly in North America, really in the world. And he has a right to make a living. So those who say, well, it's for profit, I would say, how is he supposed to make a living right now? Not to mention, he's also pledged and already donated something like $800,000 to the very causes for which he is protesting.
Well, the issue with that is, as we all know, he had an opportunity to go with the Baltimore Ravens and his girlfriend shut it down. All right. That's one of the first major problems. Another one is that he opted out of his own contract at the end of last season. Beyond that, I have no problem with him signing a book deal to make money. That's really all this thing has ever been about in the first place. As I've stated, ad infinitum, this is a commercial society. And that is how people are supposed to think. In regards to commercialism, this is a commercial society. If you don't understand that, then you're always going to be lost in the sauce. They keep our people behind by making sure that we continuously think emotionally as opposed to logistically and strategically. I have no problem with him writing the book. Of course, I would never buy it. He has nothing to teach me or tell me about anything. And the book is not going to contain any truth. It's just going to contain narrative, but he does have the right to make money. As I've stated, not only is his publisher a Luciferian, a so-called globalist, really Luciferian, but I'm pretty sure that he was introduced to the publisher by Ness Nitty. I would not doubt that. Either Ness Nitty or his agent, but most likely Ness Nitty because she's probably acting as his de facto agent anyway.
So I love the idea of a book, and I look forward to reading it.
All right, wow. I think I agree with everything you said except the absurd conclusion. So we agree he has loose grasp of the facts, loose grasp of the issues. He's ill-informed, he's inarticulate, he's unresearched, and your conclusion in the end is, well, a book's good because somebody else will research it and somebody else will write it for him.
Basically, look, I tell you, he's a white liberal. His end game, Max Kellerman's end game, is that he needs to have, he's like a trash compactor. He needs garbage. That's his job. His job is to receive the trash and compact it and convert it. All right. So, don't ever expect Max Kellerman to say anything genuine or something that he really honestly, truly believes in when it comes to race relations or racial issues. He's not going to be fully forthright. He needs something from Kaepernick to galvanize him so that he can, convert it over to something that he can use on air.
I mean, that's a misrepresentation, but I understand what you're saying.
I was listening, Max, but
that's a misrepresentation. I did not say that, nor do I mean that.
Well, then I think you need to amend what you said without, too much.
People have DVRs.
We can all get in on this, but that's pretty much what you said. I mean, he He's not capable of defending his ideas. He hasn't shown a great grasp of the issues. You said he's going to have a researcher and he's going to have a writer, thus making a book that no one else has a chance to rebut, at least not in live time, the perfect forum for him. And in my rebuttal to you is, that's the worst forum for him. Why would I read a book by somebody who I don't trust on the issues, who I don't think fully understands the issues, who's going to have somebody else essentially putting the words on paper and also doing the research for him? I think you're right. The perfect for him would be to come on something like First Take and defend your ideas. If you can't, maybe your ideas aren't correct.
Hey, it's highly possible. Or maybe just your understanding of your ideas isn't fully fleshed out, or maybe you just don't have the mental capacity to fully understand what you perceive. Certain people can understand or comprehend things to a different level. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. It just means that they're not equipped to occupy the station that they're trying to occupy. As I've stated, Colin Kaepernick is not a leader. My issue with this whole thing is that a lot of internet revolutionaries are trying to cast him as a savior and a leader, and he's not. And they're getting emotional when that sentiment gets refuted. But I agree with Will Cain to a degree in regards to Max Kellerman and what his true goal is, his true agenda is, which is just to continue to use Colin Kaepernick as a pawn. Right? And he's right. Basically, everything that he reiterated, Max Kellerman did indeed say, which is that he's not a very good orator. He doesn't truly have a full grasp of the issues that he wants to represent. He's going to have a researcher, and that a book will be the best forum for him because he will not do very well in live, quote unquote, debate with people like Will Cain, who we already know are going to use the same recycled statistics about black criminality. And this is why, not to digress, this is why I monitor the type of interactions that go on in the comments, because I know, as I've stated numerous times, this channel is geared towards the so-called black man. And when people see that your channel is geared in a certain direction, they may like the channel, they like the content, but they want to make things about them. So this is why I go out of my way to tell people who are so-called non-black men that this channel is geared towards the so-called black man. And let me also say this to a lot of the simp black dudes: this channel is not for you either. Okay? It's not for you. If you're a simp, this channel is not for you. Why is that? Because you're an idolater. You have the woman on a pedestal. You're supposed to love and respect and honor your woman. You're not supposed to put all women on a pedestal to where you get offended when certain things are said about the woman. On my channel, I speak on numerous issues. This is not a hate women channel. This is not a hate the black woman channel. This is not a hate white people channel. This is not a hate anything channel. I assess and analyze. And if you don't have an analytical mind, this channel is not for you. If you're an emotional dude who thinks that all women should be on a pedestal, this channel is not for you. If you're a dude who wants to get down on one knee until white people give you a hug, this channel is not for you. All right. So we have to know who we are as people so that we know what to avoid and what's for us. And Colin Kaepernick has to understand that leadership is not his forte. And, I think that him deciding to write this book is an acquiescence to that fact.
Maybe your ideas
let me understand this. Is your premise that people who have feelings or thoughts about an issue, if they can't debate them in real time in their lives, if they're not confident in their public oratory skills, that they shouldn't ever express themselves, that they shouldn't write anything ever, that the process of writing and the process of talking are exactly the same, or that speaking about something is in the hierarchy of how you do this should come out on top? I don't agree with that premise.
Okay, well, taking out the word speaking on it, I believe that ideas should be tested. I believe that ideas should be challenged. And I think Colin Kaepernick has taken a forum or chosen a forum here. And I don't begrudge the man his money. We'll agree on that point. Get your $1 million. Go get paid for what it is that you want to do.
Agreed. And I also agree that people's ideas should be tested as long as you actually have empirical data to combat it with. If you actually have knowledge, like, certain people got upset at some of the things that I've stated in regards to history. And they said, well, how, I had one guy say, well, you're trying to make everybody black. It's not that I'm trying to make everybody black. This is a pro-truth channel. Okay? If I was trying to make everybody so-called black, I would say that people were black who I knew in history were actually Caucasian or who were not so-called black. I state people who were so-called black because I have actually done the research and I understand the movements and the migrations of the people of color, the so-called tribes of the people of color across the world, particularly in Europe, which most people do not know. Okay? If 2,000 years from now, if people were saying Michael Jordan was a white man and Muhammad Ali and Barry Bonds were Caucasian, if somebody was to say no, they wasn't, they were black, I'm sure that you would have naysayers saying, oh, you're trying to make all the great athletes black. You know, it's just people are incredulous because of how this society, this narrative-based society, has crafted their scope and their comprehension. But as I've stated, I'll get to those videos when I get the opportunity.
But putting your ideas up to the test is an essential element of proving the worthiness of your ideas. If Colin Kaepernick can't think on his feet or understand the issues to do it in real time, I don't think that his ideas, I think it's run into a safe space to get your ideas.
Because academics never have papers rebutting each other. It's always a live debate. Sorry, Stephen A. Go ahead.
Let's get Stephen A. in.
Well, first of all, Will, you're completely wrong. We all agree that Colin Kaepernick has a right, to a book deal. I support him on that. I think it's a good idea for him to do it. Go for it. So be it. But Will, I want to get to your point. I'm going to use a word against you that I don't think that I've ever used against you before.
All right.
And that word is unfair. I think that you're unfair here because basically, as Max alluded to, you're basically saying that somebody who doesn't have the ability to articulate themselves cogently enough to defend the positions that they partake, because of that, if they're inarticulate or whatever the case may be, they might have the right to their feelings, but they should open themselves up to being challenged. We would prefer that to be the case, but it isn't always required. I've covered many professional athletes, Will. They're incredibly challenged when you ask them questions. They feel what they feel. You can kind of comprehend where they're coming from, but there are many times when they're absolutely positively petrified of the scrutiny because they may not be able to go in depth about what they feel, but what they feel may very well have some substance.
Look, I totally understand the perspective that Stephen A. is coming from. But the conundrum here is that it's very difficult to compare an athlete who you put a microphone in his face in a locker room and you're asking him about certain issues in regards to the team, or maybe even societal issues, as opposed to a guy like a Kaepernick who decided to start a quote unquote protest and make himself the center of attention. That once again shows you that he did not plan ahead and that he really had no end game. He really just was used as a pawn to provoke. He's a provocateur. Okay, much like a Lee Harvey Oswald per se, a person who was just put in a certain place to attract attention, and when he no longer was needed, he was removed. Now, do I believe that the same end will come to Kaepernick? Who knows? What I will say is this in regards to him: there is an onus, and there should be an onus placed on him in regards to his ability to articulate his stance, seeing as he has now been created, or he's been transitioned over to a figurehead leader of a quasi-movement, so-called protest, and many other people are speaking for him. So he should have the ability to speak for himself. This is not a regular situation.
And particularly when it comes to the black athlete, let me tell you a little secret that frustrates a lot of African Americans, particularly in the athletic realm, but also beyond, Will. People, you could know the truth, and I'm speaking hypothetically here, Will, when I'm pointing the finger at you. I don't mean it literally, sir. But you could know exactly what Colin Kaepernick is saying. You could know that he's right, but you'll still challenge him to articulate the stuff that he puts out in such a fashion that it opens itself up to scrutiny, even if you know he's right.
Let me say this. That's how the media works, Steve. And I totally understand where you're coming from. Once again, the media is based on news cycles and narratives. Of course, they know that in regards to what Colin Kaepernick is saying, that racism exists. We don't live in a society of truth. We live in a society of narrative. So the same Caucasian who may not like so-called black men or so-called black people, If you don't know their true feelings, they will try to combat you on so-called facts. They will present statistics about so-called black-on-black crime or black literacy or the performance of black children in school. And they'll try to use those attempts at a point to, create a straw man argument in regards to black success not having anything to do with quote-unquote racism. These are tactics that always get used, red herrings per se, and that's just part of it. But anyway, I'm going to continue this on part 2.